was the chair of the North Coast Partnership. And so, Judy, are you here?
I am. I'm also have a tech hat on, trying to work with IT, get this thing streaming. So thank you, Supervisor Hashak and Supervisor McGordy. It is a great pleasure to introduce North Coast Resource Partnership. Catherine Gladhill is here to talk about the subjects that you pointed out. They have a ongoing technical assistance program. And also she can introduce the group to Prop 1. The details have not been released from the state. We were hoping by today they would be, but she can at least give an intro to Prop 1 so people can start thinking about potential projects for their districts, small communities, etc. So with that, I will turn the floor over to Catherine Gladhill. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Judy, and thank you all for inviting me to attend this important drought task force meeting. And if I may, I'm going to try to share my screen so I can do a presentation. Okay, host is disabled, screen sharing.
1 second, let me reactivate that.
Thank you.
All right, you should be able to share now.
Okay, great, thank you. Find the right.
Okay, welcome, Catherine. And if anyone has questions, you can write them in the Q&A box, and Anthony will pull them up later and we'll answer those questions.
Thank you. That's perfect. Can everybody see my slide?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. So very quickly, I'm just going to talk very quickly about the North Coast Resource Partnership, which shares the same footprint as the regional board's North Coast region. It is 12% of California, but includes only less than 2% of the population. It does include 34 federally recognized tribes and is comprised primarily of economically disadvantaged communities. Nearly 90% of the region is considered economically disadvantaged, and 50%, or around that, severely economically disadvantaged. Though much of the region is beautiful with intact landscapes, it does include degraded built and natural systems. And of course, it's like much of California experiences extreme events. The partnership was convened in 2005 primarily to take advantage of integrated regional water management grant funding made available through various propositions. And it is a coalition of tribes, 7 counties, and multiple of stakeholders. Humboldt County stepped forward and was established as the contract administrator for all the grants and contracts. And to date, over 90 million have been awarded as planning and implementation block grants, most of that going to local project sponsors. And to date, we have about 110 integrated regional water management implementation projects, either completed or in process. And I'll talk more about that program and the next funding opportunity through the Integrated Regional Water Management Program. In addition, we are supporting a number of demonstration projects and then numerous planning and technical assistance projects. 94% of the funding benefits disadvantaged communities, and 12% go to projects that are sponsored by tribes. There was mention of Leadership Council. We were we were so pleased to have Judy Morris as the chair of our Leadership Council, which is the decision-making body for the partnership. It is made up of locally elected officials, primarily supervisors and tribal representatives. And we are pleased to say that on our executive committee, there is co-equal leadership of both the county and tribal representatives. For Mendocino County, we have Supervisors Jarity, Williams, and McGorty involved in the Leadership Council. And on the Technical Peer Review Committee, we have Joe Scriven from the Mendocino County Resource Conservation District, who's been a long-term Technical Peer Review Committee member. These folks provide technical advice and guidance to the Leadership Council, and they do the really big, heavy lift of reviewing all of the project proposals that get submitted to the region, and then making a draft selection for Leadership Council approval in terms of which projects to fund. The North Coast is guided by some principles, primarily transparent decision-making, regional equity, collaboration, and we focus on areas of common interest and priorities. And there is respect for local autonomy, acknowledging that what might be a priority for a specific tribe in Mendocino County may not be the same priority for an entity in Siskiyou County. It also acts as kind of a regional broker for funding opportunities where that makes sense. So with that, I do want to let you know, as Judy mentioned, that wanted to let you know about the next solicitation for Proposition 1 implementation funding, which should make about $9.3 million available for local project sponsors and local projects. DWR released their draft solicitation package back in December, and we expect that the final guidelines and PSP will be released later this month or next month. And then the North Coast Resource Partnership will release its solicitation soon thereafter, probably sometime in May. We expect the PSPs will define kind of the deadlines and all of that. So we'll then pass that along in our solicitation, but we expect that the local project proposals will be due in the fall, with the regional proposals due early 2023.
Excuse me, just
Sure.
Catherine, can you give us what PSP stands for?
Sure. It's a grant proposal solicitation package. So generally what happens is DWR puts forward its kind of standards and rules and regulations for the grant for regional proposals, and then the partnership then translates that, incorporates some of the North Coast Resource Partnership's goals and objectives into that, and tailors the solicitation to our stakeholders, and then we release a package that then project sponsors can follow. The project sponsors that are eligible are, the main entities that probably you found in the drought solicitations. I wanted to highlight that mutual water companies are eligible, but they must have a real clear public benefit. And through the partnership, that it's been difficult to get mutual water companies funded just because there's so much need out there. There's a long list of eligible project types, but water recycling, water conservation, water storage. There's a lot of focus on, conveyance facilities that integrate separate water systems. Of course, there's watershed protection, restoration, and management. Stormwater resource management projects are allowed. And then water quality projects. And something that's a little different is decision support tools. So those tools that help with water management within a region. So the North Coast has its own eligibility requirements, but they are to meet the goals and objectives of the North Coast Resource Partnership. The project needs to have a useful life of 15 years. And then there's a number of legislative requirements that are fairly typical in most grant applications. And then the project sponsors are also required to adopt the North Coast Resource Partnership Plan. A lot of some important aspects of the funding. It's a competitive application projects. There are significant administrative elements, labor compliance, invoicing, and the like. There may be a cost share requirement for non-disadvantaged communities. However, for projects that serve economically disadvantaged communities or tribes, there may be the payment of, up to 50% of the funds that are provided to the sponsor up front, which is really, really helpful for planning. And the cost share requirement may be waived. And then folks need to know that the turnaround time between sponsor invoice and payment is typically about 3 to 4 months. However, there has been a range between 2 and 9 months. So that's something that project sponsors have to consider. We do, during the solicitation process, do have a proposal development support system where we have a team of regional technical experts that provide one-on-one proposal assistance and review. And we usually set up sort of office hours to connect project sponsors with these technical experts, and we will be also offering in-person, sort of office opportunities during workshops. So there's a long range of a lot of things that folks can get help with, and just proposal review is also quite useful. We also have, and this is really important to all project sponsors that might be out there, we have an ongoing project development technical assistance program. And this, there is a request for project concept proposals out right now. So we are soliciting these kinds of technical assistance. And these are to link up project sponsors with technical providers, generally engineers, projects, so depending on their need. So they will actually help to develop the proposal for the Prop 1 application. They'll help develop some concept designs. There are site visits, etc. It's usually a value of about $15,000, and then help them throughout the proposal process. So there's a link at the bottom, which when I'm done with this presentation, I'll put that into the chat. And then and folks can go online, and it's a very simple application process for this technical assistance. We will be accepting proposals on a rolling basis through this month, and we intend to probably extend that through May. I also want to put a plug in for the North Coast Resource Partnership Small Community Toolbox. This too is something I'll put in the chat, but it's a toolbox of resources and tools for small community water and wastewater systems in terms of helping them manage and fund projects for system improvements. And with that, here is some contact information, and we encourage anybody to reach out. And I wanted to also just quickly add to your drought report that we will be submitting tomorrow another bundled drought relief proposal to DWR that includes a proposal for the Round Valley County Water District for their groundwater vulnerability monitoring and assessment project. So that will be funded at $500,000 through the partnership.
Well, that's good news. Thank you, Catherine. And so people they have your phone number there, they have your email, and you would be the person if people wanted to talk to a real live person, you would be the person?
That's right. If there are tribal members out there and they have a tribal project, another person to contact would be Sherry Norris. She's our Director of Tribal Engagement, and her contact information is there as well.
Okay, and I think that you had a couple programs that were funded this round already. The Brook Trails was one of them, wasn't it?
Yeah, let's see, let me pull that list. So I think during the last drought round, I believe it was Brook Trails. Yeah, I believe it was the Brook Trails project. Oh, and the other project that will be submitted tomorrow through the regional proposal will be the Mendocino County Resource Conservation District Rainwater Harvest and Gray Water Workshops Demonstration Project. So that too, and that is for almost $50,000. That project will be submitted as well.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that presentation.
Sure. Thank you.
Let's see if there's any questions out there. Anthony, are there any questions in the chat box?
So far, there are no questions, but I do want to let you know that the live stream has successfully started. So we are live streaming.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, thank you, Catherine.
Sure.
Appreciate that presentation,
Catherine.
Thank you all. I'll stop sharing now, and there we go.
All right. Well, very good. So we're going to move on to the water hauling situation with Howard DeShiel, Director of Transportation in the Water Agency. Is Howard on still?
Now I'm hooked up.
Very good.
Well, good evening, John, Supervisor McGordy. So the grant we were given by DWR that was on the list of grants that Supervisor Haschak just read off is still valid for this year, and we will be able to resume hauling water from Ukiah to Fort Bragg pursuant to their mutual aid agreement whenever Fort Bragg needs us to do that. Everything is basically the same as it was last September, October. We're still limited in that the grant won't cover water for commercial uses, but last year the city of Fort Bragg had enough supply to do the commercial, and we're hopeful that will be the case this year. But regardless, we have grant funding for residential rewater supply. So we should be able to do just what we did last year.
Well, one question that Ryan from Mendocino brought up yesterday was, Ryan Rhodes, was how much lead time do you need for if they start needing water?
Well, yeah. So the John Smith at the city of Fort Bragg will pretty much know when Summers Lane Pond is, falling low and the flows are low. We won't need a lot of lead time. We'll have this time a contract in place. I've yet to bring that to the board, but I expect to bring it to the board in May. So it should be pretty fast this time.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Howard. Are there any questions for Howard, Anthony?
No, there are not.
All right. Well, we'll move on then. Thanks, Howard. Have a good evening. Supervisor McGorty, do you want to go over the governor's executive order?
Sure. So I don't know if many of you have seen this. John, are you in a position to screen share this? I don't know if you're able to or not.
No, I'm using my iPad, so I don't.
I have it up on my iPad. Judy, do you by chance have it available?
If you guys go ahead, if you want to shoot it to me in an email, I can put it on the screen.
Okay, Judy, can you send it to Anthony, please?
Sure, I'll do that right now. Thank you.
So the governor has issued a drought executive order that changes some things, and in this one of the things a couple items that I think are noteworthy. One is that there were restrictions last year about taking water out of wells or really interbasin transfers, which was technically city of Ukiah could not sell water to the coast. And it looks like he's suspended that. That's not going to be an issue this year. So if we get into a situation where commercial water hauling becomes necessary and the city of Fort Bragg can't provide the water to commercial customers in Mendocino, they'd be able to contract or be able to have someone bring them water from Ukiah or Willits. It would be pretty expensive, but they would at least have the option of doing that, which they didn't have last year. That's one of the main things that's changed. The other thing that is going on that is a little bit different now is that well permitting authority has changed because of the fact that we have the groundwater sustainability agencies in place in some areas. People who are drilling wells will have to get cleared by the groundwater sustainability agencies in order to get a well permit. So that only really affects Ukiah Valley. That's the only place in Mendocino County where we have a sustainable groundwater agency. So we'll be working directly with environmental health and planning and building services if people come in for permits for the wells. At the moment, we don't really have a plan. I don't think, and we kind of know which areas are impacted in Ukiah Valley. So some of the Ukiah Valley is quite good and there's plenty of water. In other places, it's a little bit more of a challenge. So that's one of the things that's kind of changed. That's what this is right here.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I am.
Perfect.
That's kind of the first thing on the list that you have. And that's mostly what's on this is just all the requirements that have to do with that. consultation with our groundwater sustainability agency, and then a permit evaluation. So how that's going to be implemented, we're not exactly sure, but that's something that's coming down the line. So I think that's mostly what we have on this of interest from the drought executive order. I don't think we have.
Supervisor, we're getting the complete document to you shortly.
Okay, all right. So we'll just talk a little bit about that, and I can't remember, John, on the rest of the agenda. Do we actually talk a little bit about our well ad hoc that you and I are on? Is that something that comes up later?
Well, that's a good segue, Supervisor, because that's the next on the agenda is the water extraction, trying to see if there's any community input on it.
Okay.
So you want to move right in?
We'll segue to that pretty quickly, but I'll just also tell you that there is quite a big to-do about the Russian River, where once again we are under a drought emergency orders, and curtailments are likely, which was same as last year. I think the State Water Resources Control Board is trying to find a little bit more equitable way about how they're going to do it. Last year, they got a lot of flack and a lot of unhappy people because of the way that they just canceled some of the water rights, some very old water rights, which were supposed to have priority. So they're trying to do it differently this year. And one of the ideas that we're floating is trying to have a cooperative water conservation approach where essentially there would be some opportunity to share, so that the senior water right holders who have priority on water can reduce the amount of water that they use to the benefit of junior water right holders who don't have anything under the curtailments, and that could be a transfer. They could sell it, or who knows what. So that's a voluntary transfer arrangement that Mendocino and Sonoma counties are working on, and that's a breakthrough because that's something that hasn't been done before. Other than that, Lake Mendocino is in kind of a little better situation with water this year than it was last year. But we're not, certainly we're nowhere near enough water compared to normal. So we're going to have to be very, very careful with what we've got, because once again, the priorities are health and human safety, followed by fish and wildlife and requirements for minimum flows, and then finally agriculture. So some people will be short water again this year, no matter what happens. So that's probably the most impactful thing in the emergency orders that are coming up right now from the governor. So what we can do, if we're kind of waiting for the rest of the emergency order information to come up, we can go to the next item, John, in the interest of time.
Yeah, so the next item is we're seeking community input on this water extraction proposed ordinance that Supervisor McGordy and I have been working on. And we've had a couple meetings with water haulers and people concerned about water issues. And so the extraction, we're kind of looking at, maybe doing an administrative permit on wells that are selling water for commercial purposes. The background is that, we've been getting too many calls. People are too concerned in these years of drought that we have of water being hauled to from the valley floors up into the hills, and people next to these wells, their wells being impacted to the point where, the grandmother in Covelo or Redwood Valley, don't have water for their own needs. And so it's really impacting some residences throughout the county. And the impact of water hauling certainly has been difficult one too, because people are hearing water trucks going all night. It's damaging roads, putting wear and tear on the county road system. Also, bridges are being damaged from the weight of these water trucks. So we're looking at trying to do something about where the water is sourced, and so that's what we're going after, because it seems like getting the water haulers, certainly they can have books that say where they got the water, how much water they're hauling, and where they're hauling it to. But, it's kind of hard to enforce that except for looking at their books. So what we're looking at is something about some regulations on the extraction for commercial purposes.
Yeah, I would just add to that. We're not looking to make it impossible for people who already have legitimate use for water, like hauling water for domestic needs, for health and human safety, for construction. So we're not really looking to go after that as much as we are illegal cannabis growing. And again, it sounds like it should be a simple task, but it's not. It gets really, really complicated because you have to decide, okay, how do you regulate that? So, there's two parts to it. One is the people who provide water, keeping some sort of a record of who they sell to. And typically most of the people who sell water have a card lock system, so they don't even really talk to anyone or see anyone. Someone pulls up with their truck. It's like a self fueling station, except they're filling with water. So there's a card that records what goes on and the date and the time. And then the person who's buying the water typically has an account, and they settle up with the water company at the end of the month. So then it becomes up to the delivery people to keep records. And the problem comes in is that a lot of times when they're delivering to somebody, they may have an illegal cannabis grow, but they might also have some residences that are hooked up in that system too. So it becomes problematic because while they might have a small grow of 2,500 square feet, but they also have 3 residences that are getting water. So part of the delivery is legal and part of it isn't. And we don't want to shut water off for legitimate health and human safety. So boy, there's a lot of things to consider on this. And then when we start getting into the regulation part, the most important thing is to have an idea of what's happening to the aquifer. So in order to do that, you need to do some hydrology studies, which can be pretty expensive, but also very definitive in terms of telling you what's going on with the water resource, which is the part that's important. And we also need to kind of have an inventory of how many commercial wells are there out there in Mendocino County, because we don't really know. Not everybody has a business license. There are some that are really well established, such as Laytonville. They have a municipal well that they sell water from. Willis does, Ukiah does. Then there's the NorCal water plant on Talmadge Road in Ukiah. So there's some places that are totally legit, and most of the water that goes out is going to beneficial legal uses. The other thing that the water company or the water haulers told us is that some of the legal folks are just scooping up surface water, as one of the drivers said, in whatever puddle they can take it from. And of course, that's totally illegal. And that becomes an issue of enforcement. Enforcement's not easy because we're really short staffed in terms of the sheriff deputies. And so our idea is that if we enforce this primarily where people load up from the legal sources, then we can check log books and such. So what we're finding is that it's a much more complicated task than we thought it was going to be. So certainly, if folks have ideas on this or comments, this is a good time through our chat to let us know.
And another thing is we are really focused on the private wells that, are just out there selling the water that might be affecting, their neighbors. The municipal systems, the that we see, they're regulated by the State Water Board, really have a good idea about their what's happening with their water supply and the kind of the replenishment of their systems. But it's these ones that just drilling wells and selling the water off is have been more problematic, is what we've found.
Mm-hmm. So we have a comment, a couple comments from Jessica Stellatos in the chat, and she says, to answer the question from yesterday, there are at least 10 confirmed locations where water extraction is happening for water hauling in Round Valley. And she said water trucks are hauling water here already. So the water hauling season's begun in some locations.
Yeah. Okay, are there any other comments? Or Anthony, can you take the executive order off right now? Thanks.
I've removed it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Are there any other comments about the water extraction or hauling?
Not that I can see, no.
Okay, so, certainly if people have comments, if you think about it, if you have anything you want to share with Supervisor McGorty or myself, please do. Our emails, mine is hascheckj@mendocinocounty.org. And Glenn, yours.
Yeah, mine is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me is glennmcgorty@gmail.com. That's the one that I check most regularly.
All right, so please get in touch with us if you have any ideas about, what you think should be done. So next we're gonna go to.
Go ahead.
We do have Jim Shields. He does have his hand up. He didn't leave a comment in there, but I don't know if he had a question that he wanted to voice instead of type.
Yeah, can you bring Jim into the meeting for a quick discussion, because we've had a lot of conversations with Jim. He's been a really good source of information.
All right, Jim, you can go ahead and unmute.
Hi, Jim.
Okay, I think I unmuted.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple of quick comments on the governor's drought order. Our reading of that is that it's not so much another step in the permit process, but they specifically use the process. Of course, we only have one Sigma, that's Ukiah Valley, but they talk about verification, and what they're looking at for there as far as any adverse effects upon the basin. And you would almost have to, I would think, you're talking at that point about hydrological studies. I mean, I don't know how else you would do it. So that's just one comment. On the water agency itself, as far as funding, one of the things I discussed with Ellen Cross the other day was to perhaps model funding in the same fashion that the State Water Board does. That's essentially by size of the water district, as far as population, and they have a calculation for that, and that's supposed to cover the cost for them on their visits to water districts and inspections and other sorts of things that they do for us water districts. And yeah, I wholeheartily agree with both John and Glenn on this whole well extraction and water hauling thing. It's of course we knew it from we knew it already from years and years and years of dealing with this whole thing of selling water to people who are outside the water district. Yeah, I mean it's really problematical. John and Glenn, since we had our meeting with one of the haulers, I've done, and it's not scientific by any stretch of the imagination, but with a little bit of help from others, my estimation as far as let's call it the mixed use of water at the end use, where you've got to grow, let's say it's an illegal grow, it's upwards of about 90% of those sites are going to have a certain percentage, and it looks like it's, in most cases, it's right around, I don't know, 50%. Some cases it's more, in other cases it's less. But about 50% of the water is going to be used for legitimate purposes other than growing weed. And yeah, the big problem, it starts with water extraction, but it's really going to be the start use in that, in the cycle, getting control of there. And we're talking about the private sector, I think, in total. I mean, that's where the problems are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that really needs to be looked at. And those that are commercially selling water, that's got to be permitted, business license, metered, basically modeling what water district and city utilities do already. So those are just my thoughts. I think we're all kind of in agreement,
Mm-hmm.
where this whole thing is headed. But it's going to take a little a little bit of work to get it nailed down. I know in conversations with the sheriff, with both the sheriff and the highway patrol, this is just over the truck part of it, is that neither the CHP nor the sheriff, basically they're talking about constitutional issues that, they just cannot be pulling people over in water trucks because they may or may not be hauling that water to a place that's legal or not. The CHP will continue, and typically during a hauling season, all of the truckers who are on our roster, they are inspected by the CHP, but they're mechanical and weight inspections. The CHP has never followed water trucks to see where the water is going, and the sheriff is also basically done the same thing. He said there's constitutional issues involved here. He said if we happen to catch a hauler at an illegal site where we're there already, yeah, that's one thing. But as far as them getting involved in the tracking of those water deliveries, I mean, he's just not going to be doing it, or at least that's what he said to me.
Right.
As he puts it, he's more concerned with the more of the mayhem and murder kind of crimes that go on, unfortunately, in the cannabis growing regions of our county, and that takes up his time. So he unfortunately doesn't have the luxury of just stopping someone with a water truck and saying, "So where's this going? Let's see your logbook." So these are some of the obstacles we're finding as we try to figure out how do you regulate this.
Yeah, the one thing he is doing, Glenn, and he announced this at our MAC meeting last month. John was there, where he's formed a 4-county coalition, something, I forget I think it's for safer communities, coalition for safer communities or something like that. But anyway, he said that's where he's going to be going after what he called the big, the bad, and the ugly. Because he just doesn't have the resources here in Mendocino County. Well, you guys know that already. He said that he could only handle 100 growth sites a year, and he estimates there's over 10,000. So the joke is, well, it'll only take him a century to get that done. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jim. Yeah, appreciate your input today and in previous meetings too.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so we're. Oh,
I'm sorry. We still have Marlena. Marlena raised her hand as well.
Okay, Marlena.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
I just wanted to update you. I attended a meeting on Wednesday hosted by DWR to explain the intent of the executive order. And one of the items that they explained is that the executive order's intent is to exclude private individual domestic wells utilizing less than 2 acre-feet per year. which comes out to about 1,785 gallons per day, which is quite a bit higher than our current 1,500 gallon per day definition of a major use for commercial industrial.
Yeah, that is a slug of water, because I figure that for most domestic users in Mendocino County, we're using less than half an acre foot. Typically, we're pretty stingy with water in our county, just because in a lot of places we don't have much of it. So that is a very generous exemption.
And Marlena, if you could introduce yourself and your position, that would be good.
I apologize. My name is Marlena Bourbonnais-Dooley. I work for the health department in environmental health. I'm the land use program manager, and I am the well permit issuing authority for Mendocino County.
All right. So your takeaway from the meeting you went to was that the governor's executive order won't have that much impact in Mendocino County?
Yeah, most of our applicants are for residential domestic use, and they're far below the 2 acre feet.
Yeah.
But we still need to meet with county council and adhere to their advice.
Okay. Well, thanks for that.
Thank you, Marlena. That was helpful.
Okay, so we're going to go to the round table now. And if anyone wants to start off, that would be great. Anyone from Ukiah? Or John Smith, are you on from Fort Bragg?
Hello, this is John Smith.
Hey, John.
How y'all doing?
Good. Thanks.
So an update. Well, it was looking pretty rough there until about last week when we saw some rain in the forecast, which was great. We received about 2 inches from what I understand. The river is certainly up, quite a bit up to 170 cubic feet per second. It was down around 15. We were certainly expecting to start this drought much sooner than last year, but hopefully this has postponed things for at least a few weeks. Also looking at the future forecast here, it might extend things a little bit more for us, give us a little more time to prep, and hopefully shorten that drought window on the backside. So we're hopeful to keep this rain coming and again, give us a little bit more time to prep and try to work on some other projects before we enter into that drought project, which generally is just that. Looking at some of our past graphs, some of the data provides, we're trending similar to 2015. Currently, even with this spike, back then we had a couple similar spikes. And really 2015 wasn't a great year either, but our small desal plant should take care of that. If that is actually the case, then it will trend the same. But we are still quite a bit behind on our other 2 sources, our 2 spring sources. So we don't expect enough recharge to have similar results from as last year. We will expect to be still much lower than we were last year. So about a month or so ago, we were 30% behind on all sources from the previous year. So that's a pretty significant amount. So I'm not sure these rains will help us to catch up or not. But on the project front, we've got a number of projects. Currently, our CIP is just under 60 million for water projects, and we're getting started on a number of those, both design and construction, and that's over a 5-year period. We've got a few wastewater projects. One is reclamation, which can go either to sewer or water. So we're working on some of those planning grants and so on and so forth. But other than that, we're just going to be buried in projects for a while, and hopefully the next 5 years will bring us some additional storage and conservation through technology.
So John, are you planning on starting up your desalinization unit very soon, or how are you going to work that into the mix?
So that's pretty much used when our the Noyo River is down to like less than 1 CFS, and that's generally when we get those. We have that impact of those high tides and just that saltwater intrusion. So generally, if we've got around 3 CFS, it can push back that saltwater and still provide a fresh water for use. So it'll be a while. It'll probably be hopefully. I'm going to say hopefully August or so before we get into that zone.
Got it. And so you're basically set up too, and like Howard, when the need to attract water and into Mendocino, if it happens this year, you're pretty much ready to go for that.
Yep, I think we've got a pretty good plan in place, and it worked really well last year. I'll talk to Howard about some minor changes. We just got to keep the trucks out of the inside of the fence, just so they don't scuff the liner or anything like that. So pretty minor things like that, but it was a pretty smooth process by the end at least, and it worked out all the bugs, so it was good. I think we're set for that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And John, you said you have $60 million in the capital improvement projects over the next 5 years?
Yes, just for water.
Wow. That's big endeavor, right? So congratulations on that. You have your work cut out for you.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks.
You bet.
Okay, so I'll read what Ryan Rhodes, who's with the Mendocino City Community Services District, he wrote because he wasn't able to attend today. So he said that the MCCSD board declared a stage 4 water storage emergency on March 28th. This is our most severe and moves everyone back into the 40% mandatory conservation mode, along with a host of other conservation measures. To date, we have not received any reports of dry wells, but we are starting to see the water haulers in town again. Over the past 8 months, a number of property owners have increased their individual water storage capacity, adding new tanks, from 1,000 to 5,000 gallons in size, and hopefully filled those tanks with excess winter water. This is a great step, which we continue to encourage for all property owners. And he goes on to talk about the $5 million in grant funding to plan, design, permit, and construct a 500,000 gallon water storage tank, complete an emergency intertie with the Mendocino Unified School District water system, and drill up to 10 new supply wells. While this is a great step towards longer-term resiliency, it will be a number of years, maybe 3 to 5, before the project is complete and in service. And the MCCSD is currently pursuing a grant through the state SAFER program for technical assistance to improve data collection, conduct a feasibility study, and increase community outreach. So that's that. And he also had some issues with, the porta potties for the township of Mendocino, and then also outdoor dining. So that's something that I think Supervisor McGordy and I will take offline and try to figure out how to deal with that. Okay. Right. Are there any other reports from out there? Jessica?
I see Bree Clotter is on. Bree, can you talk a little bit about Redwood Valley County Water District?
Yeah, I sure can. Actually, I was just, you mentioned that we had gotten $1.8 million for a well. And the reality is it's for a lot more than just drilling a well. So I wanted to quickly go over what that $1.8 million is for, if you guys are interested.
Yeah,
Sure.
please.
Okay, so we got some money. Basically, the project description was to upgrade our SCADA systems, to upgrade pumps in Lake Mendocino, to upgrade our water treatment plant, to identify and drill a groundwater well, and then also need for a feasibility study to look at lowering the intake pipes in Lake Mendocino. Those were well out of the water last summer, so even if we'd had access to water in Lake Mendocino, we couldn't have accessed it. So the scope of work includes $150,000 for project administration, and we're currently looking for a project manager that can take over the administration of the project. There's also a section that involves planning, and that involves doing a cultural survey, an environmental survey, and then the feasibility study. The section that involves design includes the drawing specs and bid documents. And then the construction is 3 VFDs, reconditioning 3 motors, new SCADA system, removing a decommissioned chemical storage tank at the water treatment plant, and drilling and equipping a new well. So it was, they keep saying it's just for a well, but it's actually for quite a bit more than that. We realize that time is of the essence because we have to spend the money by the end of March 2024. And so we're really anxious to find a project manager that can start moving forward with this project. So anyhow, that's what's going on with us right now.
Well, thank you, Bree, for explaining that it's a lot more than just drilling a well.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty expensive well, but
yeah, we did too, and I got a lot of questions about it, and asked that I be able to see the actual proposal and what was funded. So I was really happy to see it was more than just a well. Yeah.
Well, that's good news for Redwood Valley, because I know Redwood Valley struggles with water, and it's one of our, inside of my district, one of my big areas of concern.
So if anyone knows anyone outside of the county who wants to come in and be a project manager for this, Bree is the person to contact, right?
Sure.
Right. Okay. Is that it, Bree?
One other thing I'd like to really briefly touch on, we're doing a feasibility, we're looking for a well, and there's a lot of uncertainty whether we're actually going to find a source of water within our district, within the district boundaries, that is going to meet our demands. And so, we've been talking, so the Lake Mendocino could provide us with ag water, but we need some source of municipal water. And we are currently limited to the amount of municipal water that we can get from Millview, which is where we buy all of our water, or all of our municipal water. And we're limited by the size of the intertie between Millview and us. We can pump 300 gallons a minute through that intertie. And if you do the math, that equals a little bit over 40 acre feet a month. And last summer, at the peak of the summer, when we were on 55 gallon a day restrictions, our community was pulling 39 acre feet a month through that intertie. So that intertie basically provides us with basic water for municipal use. basic. I mean, that's it. So I think long-term, we've got to find some funding. And I was just thinking, as I was listening to the presentation by Catherine, that we really need to think about getting some funding to increase that intertie system, the delivery to more than 300 gallons a minute. So that's, I think, a really big, important long-term project that we need to start thinking about.
I agree with you, and I've said all along it'd be great if we were able to move water easily from Talmadge to Redwood Valley and have an interconnection, so we have some resiliency in the event that anybody's system goes down. We've got backup water.
Yeah,
you know, it's involved to do that a little bit because first of all, you have to work through all the permitting that goes along with it, including the fact that so many of these districts are their own kind of special district, so that involves LAFCO. So it's not a quick process. It's about all I can tell you, but I think it's one worth pursuing. And the city of Ukiah is quite interested. They're set up well to source and treat water. So you know, I'm hoping in my term that we can at least get the planning started on that.
I agree completely, but my aha moment was that our current intertie system is maxed out right now at 55 gallons a day. So it doesn't matter where we could get water from. We can't physically get it up here. So we need to increase the delivery rate of that intertie system. And that's not going to be cheap.
No, that's a major capital improvement.
Yep.
Might require bonding and multiple years to pay back.
Yeah, well.
Okay.
Right, who else is out there?
We haven't really heard from Jessica. I don't know if you have any more to add, Jessica.
Bring in 1 second. Sorry, my computer's not doing too well right now.
So while Anthony's bringing Jessica on, I'll just say that our next meeting is going to be on June 16th at 4 o'clock. So mark your calendars, June 16th. You know, we should have a better idea then about what's happening with the drought, since right now it's kind of easy to be lulled into complacency with this rain, but the big picture is will be more apparent. And
And Jessica, you're on, so you can go ahead and unmute.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. Let's see, I'm Jessica Stellato. I work a little bit with our Round Valley County Water District up here. So as Catherine mentioned, we are getting some funding to take on a vulnerability assessment, which will help us gain some insight into our aquifer properties and hopefully get some electronic water level monitoring, so we don't have to go out and do that manually, and we can get a better sense throughout these irregular seasons we're all having now, as well as contaminants, which we know are around. And then, you know, as I mentioned earlier in the chat, I have seen some water trucks driving around towns. So it's clear that some people are either low on water or they don't have a well at all and are still just relying on someone else's well to supply their needed water for their whatever they have going on. Seems very early for that to be happening, but there you go. And then also our municipal advisory committee or council up here formed a small committee to really explore developing a feasibility study for for both emergency firefighting water system, which we have identified through a community process that is a high priority here in the community. I've personally witnessed multiple buildings burn down in our downtown. And I'd love to have us be able to rebuild some of our town. As well as a feasibility study on the potential or need for a municipal water system. So if anybody has any additional direction for this small committee of volunteer people that are spearheading that feasibility study, then please help connect me with whoever can help them. That'd be great. Thanks for focusing on this important issue.
Well, thanks, Jessica. So the funds that you're looking for would be for both studying the quantity and the quality of the water in the aquifer in Round Valley?
For the vulnerability assessment?
Right.
Yes. As far as the feasibility study, I'm not sure what they have in mind for municipal drinking water feasibility study. This was just kind of a new occurrence that kind of popped up by a handful of people in our community. But we do know we need a fire hydrant system direly. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Let's see. Do we have anyone else who wants to give a report?
We have John Alameda and Jim Sullivan who both have their hands up.
Okay. John, welcome.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I want to direct my comments to the water truck issue. I know you're talking about logs and such as that. And I look at it like, well, this guy is delivering to an illegal site. So that day he don't fill out his log and he just says he didn't work, or he only reports the legal places he went to. And I still come up with the idea, which I think is much better. And it doesn't have to be a deputy sheriff doing that. It could be support, or it could be a retired deputy. They use them in the bailiff system all the time. And it could be used, it could be a part-time person. It could be during the 2 highest months of the year that water trucks are being used. And that's, for an example, at the Willits well there at the park well, they could just simply follow them to where they're going, get the address and the GPS coordinates, and turn it over to either the cannabis department to see if that's a valid grow or not. And if it's not, turn it over to the sheriff's department so they could be busted. That needs to happen. If that happens where they had somebody working that 2 or 3 days a week following these trucks, it knocked these illegal cannabis grows out real quick. And I can't understand why that can't be done. The person doesn't have to make contact. He doesn't have to have a marked car. He just simply getting addresses and GPS coordinates. Doesn't even have to drive on a private road. Just get close. Stay on the county roads and get close to where they're turning off and get some GPS coordinates. That would work a lot better. I truly believe it would. Once you get some of these busted down, I think people will get the message.
There's no question, John, that we have a problem with enforcement. It's kind of overwhelming, and of course the board's been working on that. We're moving towards an active enforcement model, which basically means that we don't wait for complaints. We go looking for where there's illegal grows. I think after this year, with us finally sorting out our permitting process through the Mendocino Cannabis Department, we'll be in a lot better shape for that. Plus, code enforcement has also stepped up, and now we have more people. Probably still not enough, but I know that they brought on at least 3 more inspectors, our code enforcement officers, and we also have our active real-time surveillance available to us by satellite. So these are all things that should make a difference in this process. But
can you use a code enforcement officers to do what I just described?
They could, but I think that their time is probably better spent on things that we know for sure are real problems. Your idea of using a semi-retired person is a good one, and I thought the same thing for checking logs at the where people are filling. So essentially the way that the logs would have to work is they'd have to have a recorded date. It would be kind of a situation where they would take a look at what they've loaded in the past week or so, and then take a look at their logbook and see if they comply with each other, if they line up properly. So that's just one idea. So certainly that's our challenge is to make sure that we have some way of tracking back, and that there's some consequences if you have if you're making illegal deliveries.
Well, I think addresses really help. I think that nails it down a lot closer.
Yeah, well, you could also get very strict too, and they have these things that are GPS trackers that go in the trucks, and they report basically to a computer automatically, and you know exactly where people are going. They use it for fleet deliveries all the time for trucking companies. So I mean, there are other ways. It just depends upon how strict we want to get.
Can you require a private company to do something like that, or a private water hauler?
If we want to go down the licensing route, yeah, you could make that a requirement. If you want a license to haul water in Mendocino County, you need to have a tracking device.
Well, maybe we need to get it going. Anyway, I appreciate anything you can do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right, John.
Laytonville already requires that the haulers, put where the address is, where they're delivering it. And if they don't, then there's a consequence of not being able to buy from the Laytonville Water District. So, okay, our time's short. Jim Sullivan, are you still on?
Yep, I'm here.
Great.
Just real quick, I wanted to add for the Round Valley project that Jessica was mentioning. I just wanted to make sure that she was aware of the state's SAFER program. Means safe and affordable funding for equity and resilience. And they may be able to help kind of navigate some of the issues and questions they may have in Round Valley there going forward with developing a water system. They have specific folks that are, focused on those specific questions that they may have. And Brian Kidwell is the contact, which I can share with Jessica and you all for the northern region. So that might be something to consider if they haven't already.
Yeah, and Mendocino was dealing with the SAFER program. So that's what Ryan Rhodes said.
Right.
So you're involved with that?
Yeah, and they have community engagement capabilities to help, with meetings and outreach, those type of things, and then also funding, mechanisms too. So it might be a good fit for them. That's it.
All right. Well, thank you, Jim. And
I did want to mention that Judy did leave in the Q&A section a little bit of information regarding the California Financing Coordination Committee. And so if you're interested in that, you can just open the Q&A section and read that. She has more information there.
Okay.
Well, we're kind of running out of time, at least for me, because I'll be on to my fourth water meeting of the day. So it started this morning with Congressman Huffman talking about the Potter Valley project, and then a briefing by the State Water Resources Control Board, this meeting, and now the Mendocino Inland Water Power Commission meets at 6. So it's been quite a day. I guess I'm getting all my water needs fulfilled in one day here. So,
well, we should have it all figured out by the end of the day then, right?
If only. So,
okay. Well, thank you everyone then for attending. We know your time's precious and hopefully there's some useful information coming out of this. And the next meeting, like I said, was on June 16th at 4 o'clock. Certainly if there's anything that comes up before then or you need some kind of information, Glenn or I would certainly be helpful. So please contact us and we'll try to keep, you know, our projects going and make sure that we can survive another drought year. And if Anthony, if you want me to read that list again for any kind of recording, I can do that. But otherwise, we'll sign off. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll discuss that with Judy afterwards. She'll go ahead and send that to me and I'll speak with IT.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll see you.
Thank you, guys.
Time. All right.
And thank you for running the show.
Yes, thank you, Anthony.
Of course.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.